If we could, we would call the meeting to order, please. Good evening. As Chairman of the Board of Trustees, it's my pleasure to welcome everyone, both here and at home, to the January 26, 2021 meeting of the Barefoot Bay Recreation District Board of Trustees. As we've done in the past, we'll start the meeting by taking a moment of silence to recognize and honor those individuals who work tirelessly to protect our country and to protect our individual welfare, security, and safety. This includes the healthcare workers who serve on the front lines, members of the armed services, the police, and our firefighters. Please take a moment of silence. Thank you. We will now have the Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Gruno, would you please lead us? Thank you. Mr. Gruno, again, would you please call the roll?
Randy Loveland.
Here.
Jeff Gruno, here. Mike Morrissey. Jim Nugent.
Here.
Chairman Mino.
Yes, here.
Please also note, for the record, we have Community Manager John Coffey, District Secretary Stephanie Brown, and our counsel, Cliff Reppinger. Also out in the audience, I noticed we have Charles Henley from Finance, Matt from Properties, and Kathy Mendez from Food and Beverage. Mr. Chairman, we have a quorum.
Thank you. I don't believe we have any proclamations or anything. Okay, we will go to approval of minutes. We have 3 sets of minutes that we need approval: the regular meeting of January 8th, the beach restroom workshop and budget kickoff, town hall, or budget kickoff, and the town hall meeting on January 14th. You've all seen the minutes. Does anybody have any corrections or changes to the minutes? If not, I would look for a motion to accept all 3 minutes as presented.
I move to accept the minutes for the workshop in the town hall
I'll second.
and the meeting.
I'm sorry. Okay, do we have just the 2 or the other one?
No, all 3.
All 3. We have a second?
Second.
Yes. You've heard the motion, you heard the second. Anybody have any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Approved. Treasurer's report. Mr. Gruno.
I'll give it to Randy.
All right, I'll do it.
Oh, I'm sorry, Randy. I'm sorry. I was looking at the wrong note. Apologize.
This is the Treasurer's report for January 26, 2021. Cash balances in general fund as of 1/19/21, $2,500 in petty cash. Operating cash in banks, $3,754,699.59. Interest-bearing account, $699,181.84. Total balances in general fund, $4,456,381.43. Total daily deposits and assessments received for period 12/30 through 1/19, $102,307.12 for daily deposits. Assessments received, $190,291.92. Total deposits for the same period, $292,599.04. Expenditures over $5,000 for period 12/30 through 1/19. Florida Power and Light, $5,748.15. First Health Plan for employee health insurance, $27,344.45. Pool Sure for chlorine for the pools for 12/21 through 9/30 is $27,658. Special District Services management fees, $13,595.75. AVM Landscape and Turf Services for the golf course and ball field maintenance, $38,955.02. Card services, $5,766.51. Zambelli Fireworks, 50% deposit for the fireworks display, $5,000. MSLPA, that's billing number for the audit services for our yearly audit, $7,000. Paychecks, payroll, pay period ending 1/3, $57,796.40. The U.S. Treasury payroll taxes, $16,798.91. And Florida Department of Revenue for sales tax, $9,580.12. Total expenditures over $5,000 are $215,243.31. I submit the treasurer's report.
Thank you. You've had the treasurer's report. Is there a motion to accept the treasurer's report and approve payment of bills as presented?
I make that motion.
Mr. Nugent made a motion. Is there a second? Mr. Morrissey, second. Any discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passed. The next agenda item is audience participation, and if you bear with me again for just a short moment, I lose my papers. We did this the first two meetings, and it'll be the third and final time I'm going to do this. One of the things we're trying to do is make sure everyone understands how we run our board meetings, what the procedures are, and the rules under which we operate. One of those, of course, is audience participation. We go out of our way to try to encourage residents to make comments about agenda items or other community needs, but people have to understand how we operate, so I'm just going to go through a couple of things again. The purpose, again, of holding a Board of Trustee meeting is to execute or carry out official business of the Barefoot Bay Recreation District. The board members, this is a meeting of the Board of Trustees in public, but not with the public. Board members will not answer questions or discuss issues with participants during audience participation. Audience participation at regular meetings is simply a time when residents can offer comments about an upcoming agenda item before that item is voted on by the BOT. There are some rules that are in our BOT handbook for board members. Some of these are as follows. Public comment shall be permitted as indicated in the meeting agenda and shall be heard under audience participation. Public comment will end after audience participation closes. Public participants shall state their name and address prior to making comments. Statements by public participants shall be limited to 3 minutes. Public comment shall be directed to the Board of Trustee Chairman and not to trustees, staff, or community members. Public comments that are irrelevant, harassing, abusive, obscene, or directed at specific individuals will not be permitted. Again, according to BOT rules, the chairman has discretion as to how the rules are handled at the meetings. The chairman has discretion as to whether questions should not be answered, whether he or she will answer those questions after the meeting or in private, or whether he or she will ask another board member to answer those questions after the meeting is over. So again, that is, we encourage you to participate in the meeting. We encourage to give us your thoughts and your input on agenda items, but we do try to run an orderly meeting, and those are the rules by which we operate. With that, and again, you have 3 minutes. If you go over 3 minutes, you'll hear a little tap, then a big hook will come out, and it'll just grab you right away from that and pull you out in the hallway. Our first person up is, please, Mary Miller. Push the button. There you go.
Now it's on. Mary Miller, 906 Jacaranda Drive. I'm here to talk about the violations on these lands that are here today for a reduction, which the DOR put against these land plots. I'm nervous because it's my first time talking, but I can't see where we put a reduction on anything when the economy right now in Barefoot Bay is bad. We got repairs to do and everything. We have to have money. So if we reduce one thing, another one's going to come along and want a reduction too. We're opening up a can of worms, and I just don't think it's fair. Also, why do we have a DOR? I think we have a DOR to make things look good, see what's wrong. He's taken his time, sometimes extra time. I think we should go along with the DOR. I'm opposed to reduction of anything in the bay. Thank you.
Thank you. Elaine, number 2. Again, please state your name and your address.
Elaine Van Bershat, 1090 Parkway Lane. And I'm nervous too, Mary, and I've been up here before. We are first on the agenda, and I am the CVO president. I would like to take a few minutes to provide information as to who the CVO is and what we do. First and foremost, we are a resource and information center for all things Barefoot Bay. The office is open Monday through Friday, 10 to 2, and it's manned by all volunteers. Our space hosts the Brevard County Sheriff's COPS program headed by George Baldwin. Our highly successful American Red Cross program of the fire alarms is directed by our volunteer resident, Kathy Planasek. Previous to COVID, Barefoot Bay was ranked second in the county with only Chicago in the country with only Chicago outranking us. Our ARP Safe Drivers program, directed by volunteer Betsy Clark, provided classes to update senior drivers' driving knowledge once a month, along with lunch. It's an all-day program. Safe at Home program is directed by Sue Reddy. It's our daily check-in phone calls to residents that sign up that need some assistance. Our senior lunch program with the van is directed by Peter Carey, with drivers volunteer Jeff, Sichi, and MJ, and assistance with resident Mary Smythe. American Cancer Society Walk in previous years has been hosted by Betsy Clark and Joanne Diana, and currently Liz Ann Taylor, Meg Frigon, and Deb Odakowski are working on this year's Color My World Cancer Free. Our most recent sponsorship and partnership of volunteers was with Linda Morrissey and Mary Hill, who came to the CVO to assist in their efforts to provide homemade masks for our community. These ladies started this program. They came to us. We directed it as far as distribution. It became a domino effect in the Bay over COVID, and they then raised $1,200 from these masks and donated to the food bank. Linda Wagner Watson hosted the food drive during the Christmas parade. Deck the Halls is a working relationship with Property Services, and we decorate the Bay and undecorate the Bay. And Joanne Plaz is our volunteer who has worked tirelessly with about 12 residents also in the Bay. Our social events include monthly bingo, which all that money goes to Helping Hands, our New Year's Eve celebration, our themed dance parties and comedy shows, which we tend to partner with food and beverage to make sure that money goes to them also. The annual car show, which is my favorite, which generally has 24 to 25 volunteers. And we co-sponsor Barefoot by the Bay Festival, Barefoot by the Lake Festival, providing on that day not only monies and fundraising, but on that day we also provide at least 135 volunteers. Helping Hands helps the residents in the Bay who have violations with DOR, and they are unable financially or physically to handle those violations. We have spent in the last 2 years over $3,000 helping these residents of the money from the CVO. We've also rearranged 3 ramps in the Bay that need to be moved from one person to another, and it has been passed along, and people in the Bay have then come to the CVO, and the CVO provides volunteers.
Elaine, you're running out of time.
Okay. Last thing I'm very proud of is our charitable donations for the year 2020. We had no meetings basically because of COVID, and we felt strongly that the CVO needed to provide for the community and the employees. With a total donation of almost $7,000 in Winn-Dixie cards, Walmart gift cards, cash, lunches, and we stood by RJ's and Holy Cannoli with those lunches and dinners and breakfasts to make sure that they stood on their feet when COVID was over. I asked you to be mindful of these facts, and I hope you'll see the benefit of approving our 5-year lease.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Joseph Palazzolo.
You're probably going to hear this, I've heard it a lot. When is Pool 2 going to be open? Why is it being held up? I've heard several excuses. One, well, we had the COVID virus. We were still here. We're snowbirds, and that's understandable. Then it came July when we left. Still wasn't open. I was told it was being fixed. I was told, not just me, other people, that the heater was gone. The new one is the machine to help do the pool. The truck got hit and it got knocked over and destroyed the machine. I've heard the company doesn't exist or left after getting the money. I've heard so many things. And when is it going to open? I mean, you have snowbirds coming back, and I finally went to the pool today. I got about a half hour. And people, you've got 3 pools. This is what we pay for amenities. And we can't get it open. I heard, the company, they had employees with COVID-19 for months. Well, I know people who've had COVID-19, and they have to quarantine for 2 weeks, and they're fine. I've had my grandchildren, works for a tech company. He was only out 2 weeks. So I don't know what the big problem was getting this pool open. It's just blowing my mind, and everybody I talked to in the Bay. You know, I think it's time to get it open. It would help a lot. That's why I come down here. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Mrs., I guess it's Olympia Palazzola. I'm a Northern Italian.
That's okay. I'm here to kind of voice the same concerns as my husband. I did call the Bay and ask about Pool 2 and was told about the company that's going to resurface the pool, that the people, 4 of their employees had COVID, and that's why they couldn't start the work. But it's been almost a week and a half since then, and there were months before that they should have been resurfacing the pool, as far as I'm concerned. We're here for 6 months. We're pretty lucky to be able to stay that long, but most people don't even get to stay 6 months. Using Pool 3 has now surfaced as a problem again. 4 or 5 years ago, we had a major problem when Zumba came over. A lot of you don't even know this, but many of you do. There was almost a battle at Pool 2 because of Zumba. So we don't want that to happen again. And today we showed up for our first time to use the pool at Pool 3. The Zumba instructor was outside, locked out. She couldn't get in the pool area because there were too many people in Pool 3 area in the pool. 8 of her people were outside also. They couldn't get into the pool, and of course we showed up. I did walk to the gate and asked if we could go in. Was the pool full? And they said, yes, it was. You have to go to Pool 1 if you want to swim. That was okay. But people were on the telephone. The Zumba instructor was on, telling the pool host, you got to stop this. This can't happen. This is our time coming up. And we don't want that to happen again. It was a horror show 5 years ago, and we don't want that again. But we're all struggling to use the same pool. And all our friends now go to Pool 3. So we want it to stop. I just don't know if you can put this on the agenda, if you can let people know when this work is going to finish at Pool 2. Maybe that would make people a little bit happier. It's not fun to be enemies with someone in the Bay over a swimming pool. But, now they've closed, now they put a sign up today, and it says, Pool 3 will be closed from 1:45 to 3 p.m., and everyone has to leave the pool. You can come back after 3 p.m. You know, maybe Zuma could be done earlier in the morning, not in the hottest, most useful time that people get there, or even later in the afternoon. I know it's their pool, and once our pool, or I shouldn't say our, the pool we like to use, Pool 2, gets open, you know, maybe it'd be mute, nothing will happen. But if it's going to be another month or two, how long do we have to use the pool? So that's why we come down here, to use the pool, and I hope you'll make this or put this on your agenda and at least speak about it and let people know the truth about what's happening with Pool 2, and also to settle any effects. Somebody in the pool last week was told to get out. I was told this by someone, and a woman spoke up and said, I'm staying in the pool. I'm not getting out of the pool for Zumba. And she was very adamant about it, apparently, and said, I pay my maintenance fees. Why should I get out? So anyway, like I said, it's starting, and I don't want it to happen. Thank you.
Thank you.
I didn't come here to argue. I didn't come to Barefoot Bay to have arguments. Thank you.
Thank you. Adrienne Almeida?
I'm a little nervous as well. This is my first time here. Good evening, members of the board. My name is Adrienne Almeida. I live at 200 Sailfish Court. And if you don't mind, I'm just going
Yes,
to take
please do
this
that.
off.
Yeah.
Okay. I would like to discuss a very unpleasant and disturbing conversation that took place at the Office of the DOR Enforcement last week. I received a violation for repairing my skirting without a permit. According to the violation, which I have if anybody needs to look at it, it states that a permit is necessary if the structure of the building or the driveway is to be altered, and I use the term altered, in any way. That is the verbiage that's in the violation. I explained to both of the staff members in attendance to the meeting that I did not alter anything and that I was just doing a repair as per the violation that was stated. At that point, I was told I was playing semantics because I had offered them the definition of an alter and a repair. They didn't want to acknowledge me. So at that point, the conversation became accelerated and slightly hostile. Let's see. I was told I didn't apply for a permit. I was told if I didn't apply for a permit, my name would be sent to the violation committee. In fear of retaliation, I complied, and I filled out the request under duress. After a review of my deed restrictions, I felt it was my obligation to make the board aware of the incident, and I wanted it on record. Number 1, pursuant to Article Number 3, Section 10, it is my obligation to maintain the skirting in the same condition in which it was originally installed. Number 2, pursuant to the Architectural Review Guidelines, you need a permit for all property renovations with the exception of Section C, minor repairs without modification to the existing construction not to exceed $500. I showed the staff members in attendance my canceled check to Treasure Coast Stucco in the amount of $275 with skirting repair in the memo. Therefore, I felt I was not committing any violation of the Barefoot Bay DOR. Number 3, I would also like to state pursuant to Article Number 3, Section 14, Enforcement of Deed Restrictions. Section B, Notice of Violation. My letter was not sent via my letter was sent via regular mail, not certified return receipt, as stated in the articles. I am medically disabled, and I have recently left a 20-year abusive relationship. I moved here to live out the rest of my life peacefully and to enjoy the community, what the community has to offer for me. I have done nothing but invest money into my home. I have beautified my home to the best of my ability, and I am still working on it. I didn't appreciate the insinuation that if I didn't comply, I would lose my recreation privileges. In conclusion, I would ask that the board please strike the violation from my permanent record and send notification when done so. I already asked the enforcement office to please do that, and my request was denied. And thank you for your time and your consideration in this matter. I have all the paperwork, if anybody would like to take copies or see it, that I have committed no violation. I felt like I was being strong-armed, and I also feel like you cannot violate somebody before a violation has been committed. In my opinion, I think the DOR officer is a little too quick to write these violations out, and she needs to use a little bit more common sense when doing so. She saw that my skirting had the scratch coat, which was done on the 15th of January, and that's when she violated me. And
Okay, we're going to have to stop you because we only allow 3 minutes. We do get you understand your point, though, we do, but I don't need to go into all that detail now because the board is not going to deal with that now anyway.
Okay,
So-
well, I was told by the person that I had the situation with, because I applied for the permit, that he was not going before the committee, and, you know, it was a closed issue, so that I did not have to go before the committee, it was to be brought here.
Sure, thank you. That's fine, thank you. Again, and so people understand, we are not going to get in a dialogue. We know none of the details of any, go ahead, thank you. You can sit down. We do not know details of things, so these are simply things that the board would go back later, individual trustees or whatever, ask staff, check on them, but we are not in a position in a meeting like this to decide anything, take actions or anything like that, so I appreciate the call. So, thank you. Any other audience participation, please? Please state your name and your address.
Nancy Isley, Barefoot Boulevard. I'm just here to say thank you to this community, to everyone that was involved with the food process at the Christmas. Thank you, Joe, for allowing that to happen. The Barefoot Bay, First Baptist Church of Barefoot Bay Food Cupboard was overwhelmed by the amount of food that they got. And I just thank this community for their generosity. It all goes back to the community, so thanks again.
Thank you, Nancy. Anyone else? I believe we have, do we have any letters?
I have 2 letters from Richard Schwatlow, 636. I'd like to apologize. He had one of these he wanted me to read at the budget town hall meeting, and there was a miscommunication. So I'll read that one first. I'd like to suggest extending our current walking trail at the administration building and have it go along East Street and the pond, forming a figure 8. At the intersection of the path, an 8-sided octagon pad could be built with 5 memorial benches and an entrance. In the center, there could be a cement base with a cement vase that a resident could place flowers in as a remembrance. What is the board's opinion on the walk extension and group area of 5 memorial benches that could be a donation from a resident? And the second one for tonight is, it's so easy to forget things. As they say, out of sight, out of mind. I feel that way about our mini golf course, out of sight, out of mind. I walk in the bay most days and I talk to residents. Many have forgotten we built one, and residents that come down after Christmas do not know we even have one. It's built in a location that's not very visible, and for most part, you do not even walk past it. I would like to suggest a remedy. The board could ask for a volunteer artisan to create an information platform on the north side of the card room at Building C next to Pool 1. Calligraphy could be used to say mini golf, fastest greens in the bay, with an arrow pointing to the course, or an illustration of a family playing the game, again with an arrow pointing to the course. My question to the board is, do you feel this is a beneficial way to promote mini golf in the bay, and would you pay for the artistic supplies to do this concept?
That's it? Any phone calls to call out? None. Okay. Any other audience participation? Okay, audience participation is closed. We go on to unfinished business. Before we do that, another little procedural matter. And again, we're trying to put things in order and run the meeting as efficiently as we can, for our new board members especially. Randy, of course, has been here a long time. Understand that as we get to agenda items, each agenda item will normally have a recommendation. In order to get that item onto the floor for discussion, we need a motion first, and then we need a second. If you make a motion or you want to second the motion, it doesn't mean necessarily that you're in favor of the recommendation. It's simply to get it out on the table so that we can discuss it. You have to have something to discuss. So each agenda item we have will come with a recommendation. We'll ask for a motion. If there is no motion, then it dies for lack, if there's no second, it dies for lack of a second. If that happens, we are then open to another motion dealing with the same issue, and we would then go to discussion. So do we understand exactly? I'm talking about our, kind of like a little in-service. We want to make sure that we understand how we operate, okay? Again, I'm not trying to preach to the choir, but I want to make sure we all know what we're doing. Unfinished business, first one, Mr. Coffey, phased reopening discussion.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, trustees, residents gathered here and at home. For folks new to Barefoot Bay or returning, since the onset of COVID, the board has reviewed the reopening plans at each meeting to either confirm or change staff's recommendations. At the last meeting, consensus of the board was to ask staff to prepare a reopening plan for Building C, which is part billiards room and part the card room. And I've provided that within the agenda memo. The staff recommends opening the billiard room effective Tuesday, February 2nd, 9 to 9. It would be closed periodically between users and sanitized. The cues would be sanitized by the pool host. The center billiards table would be wrapped and out of service. And we also recommend keeping the card room closed because it is the smallest room we have, and playing cards by definition tends to congregate people. Additionally, I forwarded to the trustees yesterday a couple additional recommendations. One is for the golf course to go back to 8-minute tee times February 1st, which would allow staff to procure dividers for our fleet carts and also adjust our group sizes back to pre-pandemic levels and a return to a soft 2-rider per cart rule. The soft part of it is if you have your own cart and you want to ride by yourself and we don't have a problem, which we believe that groups would work with us, that you can ride with your own cart if you're concerned about COVID. We've contacted the group leaders. They seem to be on board of helping us with this. This is in line with what other courses are doing in the area. This is an outdoor event as opposed to an indoor event. The second recommendation revolves around food and beverage and the outside entertainment at Lakeside. Currently, we are on once a weekend live entertainment with limited capacity. We've had multiple events so far, and they've gone off without any problems. We would like to increase that to twice a week, starting February 13th. So it'd be Saturday, Sunday, usually like 2 to 6 in the afternoons. The reason for some folks may ask why 2 to 6 is there's some people who like to enjoy their weekends starting early and finish late. And we would prefer they have their midday stop at our venue, and then if they're going to go on for nightcaps somewhere else, go somewhere else. And if there's problems from overindulgence, it's at some other location, not ours. Staff is prepared to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Coffey. Okay, and we're going to do this as a motion. I'm going to ask for a motion to approve all of the recommendations from Mr. Coffey, because I would like to go on record of the board as approving what our staff does so that we do have it on record. So again, we have a recommendation about Building C, the billiards room, card room, the golf course with the additional 8 minutes and the groups added, and the lounge with the music. as we get to discussion, I would ask for a motion to approve those recommendations.
I'll make a motion that we approve the recommendations that John and the staff have put together on the reopening phase.
Thank you, Mr. Loveland. Do I have a second to that motion? Seconded by Mr. Morrissey. The motion is, now the item is open for discussion.
John, do you know if we're going to limit the, in the billiard room, will we limit the number of people that are going in? Having said that, because we're not opening the card room because of concern of number of people.
Yes, Mr. Getz is outside to make sure residents have a seat in here, but I believe we were looking at the number 4 of if the 2 people want to play billiards, there's 2 tables, they could play and keep equally spaced. That was the reason of covering the center table.
Okay, that's the only thing I didn't see in the recommendation. Thanks.
John, did you guys think of maybe requiring masks for the billiard room?
We could, but unless we have somebody sit in there, there's no way of ensuring that they wear it once they get in there. We don't have, the pool host doesn't have constant line of sight into the building.
Other comments, questions? Any other? I would just, I didn't mean to jump in. If there are none, I would like to congratulate our staff, and you know, they're going out of their way to come up with ways to reopen the Bay. I know going back to the extra music nights is going to please a lot of people, and they've been enjoying it so far. I do hope that they still social distance when they get there, and they do wear masks, even though it's difficult to do that. I also would like to commend Mr. Cruz for reaching out to the leaders at the golf course for their input in trying to get back to something normal, operating normal at the golf course. I appreciate that, and I know they are very pleased and trying to work with him to be as safe as we possibly can. With that, there's a motion to approve the recommendations. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passed. Thank you. Next on the agenda, the Violations Committee appointments. Mr. Coffey.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. We still have not received any additional ones since there's 2 vacancies and we only have 2 applicants. Staff recommends we defer this to the next meeting.
You've heard the recommendation. Is there a motion to defer this till the next meeting?
Move to defer to the next meeting.
Motion and second.
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Loveland. Any discussion?
Yeah, I would like to say regarding violations that anybody who has violations that does not feel, that feels that they need to be heard on a deeper level, please contact the individual board members. Our phone numbers are listed on the webpage at bbrd.org. Feel free to call us, and we can probably walk you through and help you with anything. I don't want anybody to feel frustrated with the process.
That's an excellent point, and I had that written down as the little procedural thing I'd gone through earlier, and I forgot to mention that please contact board members, email, call them. Everyone here, I'm sure, is going to be willing to talk to you and go through, sort out your problems, so I appreciate that. Any other comments, questions? If none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passed. Item C, bank loan and validation timing discussion. Go ahead, John. I'm not going to try to explain it. Oh, actually, Cliff, let's have you give us a recommendation, or not a recommendation, but input on it.
Well, coming out of the workshop, the discussion involved the time frames for obtaining a validation on the proposed loan to move forward with the lounge expansion and lake bank expansion project. And the board was interested in getting those timeframes and understanding what timeframe they would be working with as far as moving the project forward at this point, trying to get the project potentially have the project ready to be completed prior to the next winter season. And Mr. Coffey can address that in more detail. we have since communicated with validation counsel, who is also our who has previously acted as our bond counsel, Mark Muschin, with Neighbors Giblin, and he has confirmed to me that the time frame that he would estimate for a validation process, which he does recommend on the loan terms, is 3 to 6 months. I've sent out an email to the trustees indicating that I think that's, although I can't dispute the fact that the issue could be resolved in 3 to 6 months, I think it's probably a slightly longer window than that. It's probably a 6 to 9 month time frame that you'd be looking at. I think if you're looking at the project and you're looking at time framing for that project, it's probably safer to assume a 6 to 9 month time frame than a 3 to 6, although it may very well get done in the 3 to 6 time frame. I put that percentage, I had sent out an email, I estimated that percentage at somewhere around 60-40% on the later versus the sooner. So that's the amount of time that you'd be looking at if you were to indicate that you wanted to move forward with validation at this time. The fees, the estimated fees right now for moving forward with a validation was $25,000, which based on the loan was, I felt reasonable within the fee structure for $1 million loan on a 7-year renewal payment. So at this point, the board can do whatever it wants to do. It can defer until you get through a little bit more into your budget cycle to kind of indicate, because you're probably going to run into that winter cycle based on that validation time frame before you are able to actually start the project. And so you may want to defer that decision rather than rush it sooner, because I don't think you're going to make that window anyway. And then you can evaluate that process as part of your budget cycle process talking for next year. I think that's consistent with what staff would recommend that you do, but I would defer to Mr. Coffey on that recommendation.
Thank you. Question for you. The $25,000, as I understand it, that's an upfront fee, isn't it?
Yeah, that would be a flat fee based on the amount of the loan to move it forward to validation. It does not include any appeal process that we would have to address if an appeal was filed. I don't think that's likely, but that would not include that.
Thank you. Mr. Coffey, as I understand it, not understand it, but because of the budget unknowns and because we're just getting into our workshop of the budgets, recommendation, are we looking to postpone this to possibly sometime in March? I mean, I cannot see us putting out $25,000 right now, so I'm looking for a recommendation of what.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. It's virtually impossible to do phase 1 of the project without wiping out the next winter season at the lounge, Lakeside, and Pool 1. Therefore, my recommendation is to table this until the March budget workshops, where you'll have a better picture of the finances. If you want to proceed, it is possible to combine phase 1 and phase 2, because this has always been planned as a 2-year project. Combine it into a one-time project. Start the validation in the springtime. As the validation's going through, bid out the project in early summer. Mr. Reppinger can have the contract ready to go. We get the validation approval, we execute the bank loan, we sign the contract, and we have a clause in there that the construction cannot start sooner than like mid-April, and they can start the permitting earlier than that. That gives us the best case scenario of not running into a winter season and still meeting the goals. But I don't think anybody has a taste to want to wipe out the lounge areas winter season next year after this COVID winter we're having.
Can you tell me when the budget workshop is in March? Stephanie, do you that, or someone have that?
The first one is Tuesday, March 16th. The second one is March 25th.
Okay. With that, I'm looking for a motion, and again, motions are made so we get items on the table for discussion. I'm looking for a motion to table this item until our March Tuesday, March 23rd meeting.
Move we table until the March 23rd meeting.
Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Nugent. A discussion.
Yeah, did you say March 23rd, or is it March 25th?
Isn't our March, is it Tuesday meeting the 23rd or 25th?
The actual board meeting is the 23rd.
Yeah.
You have a budget workshop the week before on the 16th, and then the regular board meeting on the 23rd, and then 2 nights later, another budget workshop.
So the budget workshop, we're not going to really be taking any actions at the budget workshop. No. And so if we don't deal with this on the 23rd, we would then deal with it in April, correct? So again, do we want to, I'm open to anything. I'm simply saying we have to get to look at these two budget workshops to understand completely where we are before we start committing more money. So do we want to say the first meeting in April, or just defer it till the end of March?
Well, I'd like to get it on the 16th workshop for deeper discussion, and we should know more about it by then, and John can kind of give us a little bit of a plan on what it's going to look like, rolling out the bids and everything while we're in the transition of doing a validation. And then we could vote on it on the 23rd.
Okay. Can you change a motion to table it until the March 16th?
I'll make that a
workshop?
friendly amendment.
Okay. And do we have a second on it?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Mr. Loveland. Any other discussion on that? I think we're being very prudent if we hold off on this until we get all the numbers and look at all the things that we're going to need to look at for next year's budget and for the 5-year plan. So I appreciate that. No further discussion. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. New business, shopping center lease renewal, civic volunteer organization. As you all know, the lease renewal, they have a lease renewal in your packet. They're looking for a 5-year lease renewal. Mr. Coffey?
Oh, yes, Mr. Chairman. 4 years ago, the board entered into an agreement to provide the CVO the unit they're in at free and pay their regular utilities. 2 years ago, they executed the first of two 2-year lease option renewals. While that is an option for the board to just renew the current lease for 2 years, staff recommends entering into a new 5-year lease because the current lease has a 60-day out for the district. If there was some calamity that we absolutely needed that space, this board could pass a motion to notify the COP that within 60 days you have to vacate the property. I personally don't see a benefit to the community of bringing this back every 2 years. So based on the last 2 rounds of board approval of this lease, staff recommends the board approve a new 5-year lease for the CVO with the current terms.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve that recommendation? Thank you. Mr. Morrissey accepts the
Second.
recommendation. Is there a second? Mr. Gruno seconds. Discussion, please.
Yeah, I think that I'm not involved and have not been involved in the CVO for about 1.5 years. But I think that what that group of people have done, and the names have all changed, and I'm sure that's to protect the innocent. We've got Sue Reddy back involved in the board. We've got a little bit of everybody. We've got some golfers in there. We've got some bocce ball players. We've got that CVO now represents a good sampling of what our community is about. And I have seen the good that they have done. I've seen the good that they've done during the COVID crisis, and I've seen the good that they've done in moving ramps. I think that was a vital part. We actually had a couple of homeowners that came home unexpectedly from the hospital, and I saw them actually move into motion and get ramps moved over for those people that were coming home. That made their hospital stay easier and made them coming home easier. I think that they're really a vital piece to our community. It represents the best of the Bay and our volunteers, and it gives them a place to shelter, and it gives them a place to work out of. So I'm 100% backing them and supporting them.
Thank you, Mr. Loveland. Comments?
I'd like to add on to that. I see the CVO as an investment in our community. They do the things that we wonder who does that. They go out with the helping hands. The ramps. I get a call at least once a month about a ramp for the American Legion. We're still doing veterans work from our home phones. But once a month, I get a call for a ramp, and I can't move a ramp, so they've been doing a great job with that. So I would strongly support this. I think that they are an absolute asset to our community.
Thank you. Other comments? Mr. Morrissey, Mr. Nugent?
Yeah, I have a comment. I clearly am supportive of the CVO after having gone, and they give me an introduction in what they do. My concern is we're going into uncharted territories with regards to our finances, and I'm supportive of giving them a lease until January 1st of next year, so we have the opportunity to look where we are in our financial picture going forward, and then if it looks pretty positive, to then renew it for a 5-year period.
Thank you. Mr. Morrissey? Put your mic on. Yes, put your mic up by you.
Hello? Hello? You hear me?
Push the green button so it's on.
Hello? Okay. I really, I was introduced the other day, last
Hold on.
week sometime.
Just a second. Is your light on your mic?
The light is on.
Pull the mic over towards you, please.
Okay. I'm going to
Speak.
eat it.
There you go. There you go.
All right. I was invited down about a week or so ago to the office of the CBO, and I was very taken back by what they do. I really didn't think, I thought it was part of the Bay, the offices of the Bay in the beginning here. I didn't know it was a separate entity or a club, And when they described what they did and what they do, I was taken back. I really appreciate something like that, an organization like that or a club like that in a community. It does so good, so much good. With that said, you have a 16-day notification, okay? Whether it be a year or 2 years or 5 years, you still have the same clause in there. So it really doesn't make sense to make it 1 year. My opinion.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. Did you say something?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that I would want to sit as a member of the Board of Trustees and vote to issue the CVO a 60-day eviction notice. I
The
would.
60-day notice is in the lease now. Right now, it's in the lease and has been that we can, we can ask them to vacate the building at any time with a 60-day notice.
Right.
It's in there
I
now.
understand that.
Mr. Nugent, I would say there have been some Rambo boards around here, and I wouldn't want to take that bet.
Take what?
Thinking that another board might come in here and not give them a 60-day notice because somebody gets a wild hair. I've had 2 people call me in the last month asking when that space is going to be rentable.
Yeah. And I'm sorry, again, I agree with everything that Mr. Loveland and everyone is saying about the CVO, but we all know that there is a certain degree of pushback from certain groups of people and certain people who have questions about the CVO. And Mr. Nugent, you mentioned that, or maybe Mr. Morris said, you used the word club in that. And I don't think we can consider them a club if we're going to have them as a civic organization. We have to define the difference between a club that maybe meets once a month in Building A or wherever they meet and the civic organization. Having said that, then the question is, what do they do and what do they get out of this? They're manning an office every day. They're trying to help people in the Bay, and they're doing it on a volunteer basis. That's all good. That's all great. I'm all for that. At the same time, we're giving them an office space, and we're giving them utilities that totals approximately $18,000 or $19,000 a year. You were right, whoever mentioned, Mr. Morrissey mentioned about people wanting that space. We get calls from people who say, yeah, we'd like to rent that space, or if that's open, we heard it's open, we'd rent it, et cetera. Now, we're not sure they're willing to pay the rental rates that we would charge, but again, those questions come up. So to a certain degree, plain devil's advocate, I'm all in favor of having the CVO come in and giving them a lease. I think they are trying to do a good job. But again, having said that, they are using the Bay facilities to raise money and to go out and expend those monies for the good of the Bay, of the people. And because they do that in association with us as a BOT, because we grant them the space, I think that if we're going to look at this lease coming up or extending the lease, I think we need to have simply some type of report from the civic group so we know what they do every month. If they hold meetings and they vote on issues, Mr. Coffey should get a copy of those minutes. If they have a raise funds and expend funds and they do a monthly meeting of their executive board, then we should get a copy of what they did. Not to tell them what to do or oversee, but so that we can go back to these other people who say, why do we give them a free space and we don't give it to others? We can say because they are kind of like an athletic booster club in a school district. They raise money on behalf of the school, but they just don't do whatever they want. We know what they're doing because they use our name as an association. In this case, they use our space. I'm not sure if that makes any sense, but I'm all in favor of extending the lease, whether it's 2 years, 3 years, 5 years. I have no problem with that because we can, again, there is a 60-day out at any time, but I don't like to get the letters and the calls and the questions about it of wondering what they do, does anyone know, minutes, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and those may very well be out there. I'm simply saying that even if Mr. Coffey got a report monthly, if there is something to report, that would give us something to go back on. I'm not sure if that makes sense or not.
It does make sense. And I will say, Mr. Minor, I don't think that that's a unreasonable request to get copies of the minutes of their meetings. They do keep minutes of their meetings. But what I will say is I've been very involved for 6 years. As a matter of fact, even at the startup of this CVO, of this new HOA to CVO transition, I was involved in the early parts of that. I hear the same squawks from the same people for the same reasons, and the reasons over 6 years have never proven to be valid. That's annoying in the respect that you've got really good people doing really good things that take a really bad hit from people who do nothing but create a cancer within our community. I'm not a board member that will ever sit up here and support that type of cancer in this community. I've seen us do it. We do a knee-jerk reaction every time somebody who has a negative thought about something, whether it be about golf or whether it be about CVO or whether it be about John Coffey. I'm just not one to react to those things and to accommodate them with reports. If those people want to report on the CVO, they should go on the CVO and ask them. They're very nice people in there. They will give that to you. If the CVO is willing to provide that report to John, then, and they don't want to go into the CVO for whatever personal agenda item that they have, then they can go see John and get a copy of that. So I do agree with you, I think.
And that, you have to understand, that what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to say, yes, we understand the both sides of this issue from whoever the people are, the different groups. But the one thing we're doing is we know what they're doing, and because of that, we think it's a value, and therefore we are giving them the free space. Again, do you understand my point?
And I think that
it's not
if that
trying to
information-
oversee anything. It's trying to say, no, I can fall back on this and say, no, we at least know what they're doing. We get a monthly report, and that's why we're giving them free space, because they're helping the Bay.
I'm all for it. If it stops people from beating up our good volunteers, I'm all for it. Because what will happen is if they're beat up enough, they will quit.
I understand.
And they will be done. And when they are done, we will no longer have a COP office. We will no longer have the CVO. We will no longer have these benefits to our elderly who can't afford these things. Because we don't have another resource at all within our community, not one. And that's fine. If that's the way that the good people of Barefoot Bay want to go, then that would be fine. But the same people that ask for unreasonable demands, are they willing to go out and do this work? Are they willing to go out and be these volunteers? I don't think so. I haven't seen it in 6 years, and I know who they are.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
The last time I spoke, I talked about it being an investment. These folks are an investment in our community. So I don't think it's unreasonable that the investors, which are us, get a report. I think that's very reasonable. And I would certainly suggest we add that to the staff recommendation. But the big thing will be, if you went and charged them rent, it's like a food bank. Every dollar you put over there or let them save, we get $10 back. We'd be crazy to charge them rent because we'd lose out on all the good that we get from them. Thanks.
I agree with you 100%. Other comments, questions? Again, I'm not sure how we would proceed here. I know you've probably all gotten phone calls and gotten letters about different agenda items, and I have too. I've been up till 10 o'clock at night on some of these issues. I am very much in favor of, and somehow indicating that we need a monthly report from the CVO. Do we have to do that in a motion at all, part of this motion, or do we just assume that because we are doing this, they will in fact provide a motion, a recommendation? I mean, a report, summary report. Not to me, not to the board, to Mr. Coffey.
I'm all for that, but we need to, are we putting that in the lease?
No. I just want this as a condition of us granting the lease, that's all. I don't know how Cliff, how do I do that? Maybe I don't. Maybe it's just that we want the CVO to know that we want this, and if in fact it doesn't happen, then we will be looking at the lease. Because I need to justify to everybody in the Bay the things we do, and this is one of the ways I can do it.
Well, all I gotta say is good luck with that, but.
I know, I understand.
I'm all for that. I don't think CVO has a problem with providing it. I think.
And I don't either,
think
by the
a
way. I
quar-
don't think they do. So that's why I'm trying to get this out
I think a
there.
quarterly report is more reasonable than a
Quarterly report would be
monthly
fine.
report.
A quarterly report would be fine.
And so I think that if we just ask them to provide a quarterly report, but I think our motion now is whether we're approving the lease.
Okay. Discussion, are we just going to simply approve the recommendation? Do we want an amendment to it that we would expect a quarterly report from them as part of this? Or do we just go along with the recommendation?
I'd make it an amendment.
Well, yeah, I would too, but we're approving a lease, and unless we're putting this in the lease,
Yeah.
it's just going to be an amendment.
Let's go ahead. If they're there, let's go ahead with the recommendation. Is there any, because I don't, I'm not asking what your vote is. I will, if there's no other further discussion, I would ask for, the motion was to approve the 5-year lease as presented. If there's no other discussion, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. I would like entered into the minutes, if we can, or into a letter to the CVO that Mr. Coffey would expect a quarterly report from them of their activities, their business, transactions, board meetings, whatever.
Now,
Would
can
that
we
s-
make
would
a,
that- would that,
yeah, can we make a motion on that?
you can, absolutely. I'm just saying,
All
I'm
right.
trying to get it out there.
Then I make a motion that the CVO provide John Coffey with a quarterly report beginning March 30th of this year.
Is there a second? Seconded by Mr. Morrissey. Discussion.
Great idea.
Any other discussion? All those in favor of the,
Before you vote on that, do you want to clarify what your expectation is as far as the information contained therein, or do you think the discussion has?
I understand, here's the questions that came up, and I don't want to dig up old stuff. I met with the CVO too.
Good
I'm
idea.
all 100% in favor of what they're doing, they're trying to do. I don't want to dig up old business and old things. I would think the CVO has a board that meets and decides on things. I would think that. If that's the case, I need a report of what those meetings are to Mr. Coffey, the minutes of those meetings, transactions, things they vote on. If they vote to spend $75,000 on the building out there on whatever, what was the thing we put up? the pavilion, then I want that in the minutes so that Mr. Coffey sees that. That's all I'm asking for. It's a motion to have a summary report of the activities, revenues, expenditures that they do, not to approve them, nothing like that. It's just simply what are they doing for the Bay. Does that suffice? We're not trying
Well-
we're not trying to oversee the CVO.
No, I mean, I see what Cliff's point is there. In that report, I do think that we need to be specific. Do we want a financial reckoning on that quarterly? Do we want the number of trips that the bus takes? Do we want how many? They cannot give names of homeowners
No,
when they do
no.
a homeowner help because of it would just be a violation of that privacy.
My example is we held a meeting on Tuesday, March 23rd. These are the items we did. They voted to spend $23,000 on washing homes and cutting grass and blah, 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 blah. We took in $33,000 that month, that kind of thing. It's a simple report.
Okay. I got a couple of questions for Elaine if we can get her up. Is that, can we do that?
You can, but we can take, I would rather we don't do that. I would rather take a short recess,
Okay.
if that's proper, because I don't want to get into a habit of having agenda items and having the public come up and start discussing them with the board. So if we would do that, I would ask that we take a short 3-minute recess.
Or do we want to move this motion to the next meeting for the report?
Either way you'd like it, I just want it out there.
How about we
Do it.
approve the lease and look at the report
We
next
did
meeting?
approve the lease. The lease has been approved.
Yeah.
We approved that. Yeah, I think we take a recess right now. Just a 3-minute recess. 3 minutes.
On the lease? We've only gotten through 3 items on the agenda. I
if we, excuse me, if we could, we would call the meeting back to order. I apologize for that. Again, we have a motion on the floor, if I understand it, to request a quarterly report from the CVO to Mr. Coffey. The question now is, what exactly do we want in that report? Mr. Loveland?
Yes, I think what we want in that report quarterly will be their financial transactions as it pertains to their expenditures on what they have expended within the Bay and what they have brought in through charities through the Bay, through charitable donations. The other piece of what we would like to see is the overall activities, meaning how many people did they help within that quarter, and what type of help was it? Was it Helping Hands? Was it through Aging Matters? Just a category. And I don't think that has to be in detail. I think that if we just get an idea of the volume and model it on the way that the veterans run their reports to John Coffey, we'll be just fine.
Any other discussion? So as I understand it, in this report, we're going to have a financial report, and we're going to have transactions that have been taken, official transactions taken by the BO or the CVO at their meetings.
Yes.
Including that. Okay. Any other discussion? All those in favor of this motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next on the agenda, request for reduction of legal fees and costs, 368 Egret Circle. Mr. Coffey.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Reppinger and I will each have a part of this description. There was a DOR violation case at this property about illegal fence. My staff worked many months to try to get voluntary compliance. It's sort of a tug back and forth with Mr. Armington and I. I get the phone calls from neighbors complaining about violations, and I walk down my hallway and talk to Rich, and he tells me that, that he's working with them. I push him to get it to this board, to get to Cliff, because I want to, satisfy the community, and Rich is trying to get voluntary compliance. So that's why sometimes there's a gap between going to the violation board and coming here. This individual had 17 interactions with staff. One point in front of 2 of my staff, he said he was never taking the fence down, and that go ahead, take me to court. So we brought it to the board, and Mr. Reppinger can explain how all of a sudden attitude changed when Cliff got involved, and now he wants the fees waived. My recommendation is not to waive the fees.
Thank you. Mr. Reppinger.
9 times out of 10, I'm going to be in complete agreement with staff on pretty much everything. I think on this one we vary a little bit just because of the impact and the way that we kind of view the case. I completely understand the difficulties that staff has in dealing with these violations and in dealing with the violators over long periods of time. And I've seen things, and I'm well aware of some of the problematic behavior of some of the people that are accused of the violations. So that fact is not lost on me. And I know that staff has a tremendously difficult job in trying to bring these cases into compliance and walk the line between serving the residents and trying to get compliance, and they do a spectacular job at it. In this case, and so for this case, I am aware of the fact that there's been many interactions with the respondent and that they haven't necessarily been that pleasant. The case was referred, and we did, this was in a round of recent lawsuit filings that we filed when we started really amping up the enforcement efforts on our end. And this is kind of a worst-case scenario type case for us from a legal fee perspective. We prepared the lawsuit, we filed the suit, we served the suit, and immediately upon receipt of service of the suit, the respondent comes into compliance. So before we've had any interaction in terms of the court proceedings other than drafting the suit, filing the suit, and serving the suit, case is in compliance. So now, and just to give you a little bit of background and not go on too long, because I think it's important to understand the process when you're considering this issue. What we file when we file a lawsuit in the DOR cases is normally a 2-count complaint. The first count is a declaratory judgment action for the court to declare that the property is in violation of the DOR, and the second is an injunctive claim to require the owner to bring it into compliance. That's what the lawsuits are. As a part of bringing the action, when you file a lawsuit under the DOR says that the district is entitled to recovery of legal fees and costs if it brings a action against the property owner, which sounds simple and is great on paper, but is a little bit more difficult in practice, because what is required of that is to actually push a case all the way through to completion to be able to get a judgment so that the court can then say district is prevailing party such that the fees can be awarded. The problem that a case like this one presents is that because the case is resolved so soon, the case is over from an administrative standpoint, the violation is resolved, the whole issue that the district was concerned about has been resolved, and now it's solely an issue of how far does this case go to try to recover costs. At the time that we communicated with the owner, and I don't think the situation has changed all that much, as indicated in the package, you can see there were hard costs, which are filing fees, service fees, the things that are related to the actual filing of the suit that totaled $510. The legal fees that were just the legal fees in preparing the paperwork at that point and filing it was $840. So that was the total amount that was at issue when I was communicating with the owner. Because the property is in compliance now, every dollar that the district spends in legal fees to pursue a final judgment in the case is a dollar that the district, from a resolution standpoint, doesn't have to spend. And so what you're looking at is the investment of spending dollars to go pursue a judgment for legal fees and costs that the district may be entitled to, versus moving on from the matter because it's resolved, because you got the intended result. It's not an easy question to answer because you're dealing with a lot of hypotheticals. When you file a lawsuit, you don't know what the other side is going to do, and so you don't know how difficult the case is going to be. And we'll be talking a little bit more about litigation in a little bit in the agenda. But so you could be looking at, and what we would do in a case like this would be, if the district did not want to waive the fees and costs and pursue them, the owner would have two options: either pay the amount right now to the district, and then we would drop the suit, or authorize our office to pursue the case all the way to a final judgment. Depending on what is at issue and what the owner does, because they haven't even filed a response in the suit yet, we would have to address those issues. And what we would do is amend the pleadings to have the court find, as part of the declaratory judgment action, the first action, that the case was out of compliance when we filed it, and possibly, and then on the injunction claim, to turn that into a permanent injunction to require the owner to maintain that status permanently. That's what we would do. It's hard for me to estimate how much money that would cost because I don't know what the defendant will file, so I don't know how long and how much effort that will take. I think it's safe to assume that you could spend anywhere from $2,000 to $5,000 to get to a final judgment. So you're looking at the difference between what's owed versus spending another $2,000 to $5,000 to go recover that amount, possibly. You could also have the court rule against you because nothing is guaranteed as far as the cases go. So, you know, although it may on its surface, I understand why staff is frustrated. I understand the difficulties that they deal with. I would just caution the board as looking at the legal fee aspect of this as sort of a penalty and looking at it more from a business perspective of what kind of cost do we want to outlay to resolve these cases versus what we want to recover. If the district doesn't want to waive those legal fees, that's fine. I just want you to have an understanding of what's at issue.
Sure.
If you do decide to waive the fees, what I would suggest to you and what has been done, and again, let me back up for 1 second. Somebody made a comment tonight about opening up a can of worms related to these cases. Every one of these cases is different. Every one of these cases has a different set of operative facts and a justification behind each one of them. You could choose, this board has the authority to choose to waive or not waive costs or fees on any case that comes before it. And it doesn't have any impact on what you do on the next case that comes before you because they're all different. Whether you feel that the justification that the owner has provided to you, which is in the package, is enough of a justification, or the time frame and resolution justifies waiving the fees, that's up to you. You can make that decision if you want to. What I can tell you is, in the past, the district has been willing, when owners have quickly complied after lawsuits, to waive the legal fee aspect of the case and to stand firm on the filing fees and the costs. That's assuming that the owner is willing to pay it, and if they're not willing to do that and settle that amount, then the waiver doesn't stand and the case can move forward. So I offer that to you as a way of just kind of a framing of the cases, and I'll leave it up to the board as far as any decision that you want to make. I just want you to understand what you're dealing with when you're looking at those amounts.
Right, thank you. Again, I do understand all of those points, and I've dealt with issues like this many, many, many times. And you also get to, just so we know, we get to a point sometime where it's time to just push back a little bit on things. And right now, there's a recommendation by staff to deny the request for waiver of cost. Is there a motion to accept that recommendation? No motion. I would make a motion, if no one else will, that we deny the request for waiver of costs. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second that.
Seconded by Mr. Gruno. I made the motion, seconded by Mr. Gruno. Okay? And I'm allowed to make motions, correct?
Well, historically, there is no set rule that says that the chair can't make a motion.
Right.
Although I would like a half a second to check our board rules just to make sure on that.
I'm almost positive I can still make motions.
Under
and stuff,
Robert's
so-
rules, you
Right.
do not technically need to pass the gavel. We
Right.
have not on this board historically had the chair making motions.
Right.
But if you're the chairman, if
I know,
that's your
different
pleasure.
chair- different chair, different
If that's
year.
your pleasure, then
Okay.
so be it.
So right now, we have a motion to accept staff's recommendation, seconded by Mr. Gruno, I believe. Open for discussion. Board members. Yes, Mr. Morrissey.
Someone mentioned tonight about opening a can of worms. Well, and I think it's more than that. I can see the point of not going forward due to the possibility of the cost of the legal fees, you know. On one hand, what kind of precedent are we making here? We are not backing the DOR, in my opinion. They're out there doing their job, and somebody just, don't care,
Exactly.
until it hurts them in his pocketbook. Bad precedent.
I agree.
Although, it's a losing
sorry.
proposition either way.
I agree with Mike. I think it's bad precedent. And once you start going down the slippery slope, it might be tough to stop.
Comments? Mr. Nugent.
I would agree.
Mr. Loveland.
Well, it does, I don't want to set a precedence by waiving these, for sure. But what I would like to see is I'd like to see a little tighter timeline. I'd like to see the full timeline when these come to us, of when the first notice went out, in this case, it was a fence. I happen to know a little bit more about this one. But I'd like to see something, when did the fence go up? When was the first violation given? What was the action taken? Second violation? If we had a little bit of a trail, rather than what he said, she said, type of verbiage in the comment section. I'd much rather follow a trail of paperwork than I would, because I feel like we're kind of making a little bit of an emotional decision, because all we've got up there is the emotion that was behind the action.
To a certain degree, though, we're then, to a certain degree, if we do that, we're then questioning staff as to how they perform their duties. And right now, the recommendation from staff is that they did not get what they desired until we went ahead to press legal or court action, and then all of a sudden they complied, but we still had spent some money. I understand that it could cost us some legal fees to go ahead, but it could also not cost us. You know, you get people all the time who say, I'm going to sue, I'm going to sue. Well, first of all, they have to find some lawyers who want to jump on to those kinds of things. And if someone wants to get legal, get an attorney to come back and file legal action because of this, instead of simply paying the fees that they owe the Bay, my answer to something like this is go right ahead. We have legal fees also. We have a DOR. We go out, we run violations. We give them chances to comply with the violations. If they don't comply, after 17 meetings or whatever, we finally go back and say we're going to take legal action. And then all of a sudden we say, well, they complied, and now we're just going to say, that's okay, we spent money on you, we'll waive the money. I understand what you're all saying. I'm just simply not for that. I will be voting to deny the request for waiver, but that's just my feeling. I've dealt with these kinds of things before many times, and I think at a certain point, it's not really emotion, Randy, I understand what you're saying. At a certain point, you get there and say, no, you just played us right to the edge, and now it's time to pay the piper.
Well, my point, again, my point, and I don't question our staff at all, but I do think that it's wise to question the process.
Yeah.
I think it's always wise to question
Sure.
the process. What I don't see up here is the process. What I do see up here is the emotional piece of it of he said, she said, he said, she said. I would like to see, again, for me to feel comfortable in making a decision, a legal decision against a homeowner, or to take something further, for me, when we get these presented to us, I would just like to see the timeline. And it's kind of that stick to the facts. They violated on 110. We sent a notice on 112. We sent another notice on 212. We sent another notice on whatever that history of it is, whatever that documented history is. Because I guarantee you, if it goes into court, they don't care that he told him that he's never going to take that fence down. Am I right, Cliff? They're going to care about what was the paperwork. What was your paper trail? What did you do? How did you
It's even more
inform them?
simplistic than that. I mean, the court just looks at it from a standpoint
Sure.
of, is there a violation? Is it still active? What it,
Right.
you know, I mean, it's a pretty simple analysis from that angle. But did you comply with your process? Yes.
And so for me, I would just like to see that, I would like to have the comfort that we did. Do I feel that we did? Yes. I mean, I have the faith in the fact that the staff did that, but I don't see that. And I'm asked to make a decision to spend another possible $3,000 to carry this forward without seeing that.
Other comments, questions, discussion? We do have a motion on the floor and a second on the motion. I will actually, you're not supposed to go to individual vote count unless a board member asks for it, so I will ask for that. I will go individual vote, a roll call vote. Those that signify by saying aye, or if you're in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye. We would stand with Mr. Loveland.
I'm going to have to say no.
I'm sorry?
I'm going to have to say no.
No. Mr. Bruno? Yes. Mr. Morrissey? Mr. Nugent?
Yes.
The chair says yes. Motion passes 4-1.
Can I get a clarification on that? That was to not waive the cost or the fees?
The way it is
correct?
now, deny the request for waiver of costs, and I believe up above, it shows 510 and 840. Is that correct?
So that's,
Yes.
yeah,
Yes.
we're referring to that, okay.
Yep.
If the chair would just indulge me for one
Sure.
final comment after that. One is I would just say, and I think I pretty much covered it, I would just advise the board to keep an open mind. You probably will see these coming forward in the future, and I would advise the board to keep an open mind related to the facts and circumstances related to any one individual respondent. Chances are, if it gets to this point, as it was in this case, it's a pretty bad scenario of noncompliance. But there may very well be a situation in which a respondent a reduction would be justified. We do have a reduction worksheet that we have provided to applicants and a form to fill out, just in case they want to make that request. And so it may very well be in the future that there is a justification that the board may want to entertain, and that nothing that the board has done tonight or any previous action would preclude it from examining that and giving that full consideration. So I would ask that you do that. And then the second point I wanted to make is this is exactly why, and some of you may or may not have caught on or heard me say it, but that we altered our process in what we were doing with the DOR cases. Rather than just rushing in and filing the suit first, we're now serving the suit upon the owners before we actually incur the filing fees, so the owner can actually understand that this is coming. And so it kind of gives a buffer layer in between the filing of the suit, or the drafting of the suit and the service and the filing, so we don't incur those hard costs. We think that that's a fair way of at least giving that the respondents one more opportunity before we actually file, to make sure that we're not just, that we limit the chances of running into this situation again. So that's what we've done.
Thank you.
So,
Mr. Chairman.
Cliff, was that done in this case?
This case was just a straight up filing.
Okay,
He was
so
not,
it
they
was,
were
yeah,
not,
it
they,
was not
they
done
were
in
given
this
the notices that staff gave them. They were well aware of the
And
fact that the
we dealt
lawsuit
with
was
this
coming.
case at the last meeting, or 2 meetings ago, whatever. I can remember asking about the fences and all of these things, so this has been an ongoing case.
I can assure you, based on my conversations with staff, this owner knew good and well that a lawsuit was going to be filed. They were well aware of it, and they neglected it, and they basically drew a line in the sand with staff to say,
Right.
go ahead and do it.
And
And
to a
that's
certain
what happened.
degree, we drew a line just now on
Yep.
this kind of case,
Yep.
so. All right,
Chairman,
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
for Mr. Rettinger, is it possible, does go that far and goes in front of the judge and makes a decision, is there no punitive damages award or
No.
any legal fees you could get?
Well, the legal fees award would be given if we prevail in the matter. So if we prevail in the I mean, I can't guarantee it, but the court under the DOR is authorized to award the district its costs. And generally, if you prevail in a suit, you're going to recover your costs. And so that's what we would have to do in this case, is to move forward with a final determination and a request for the fees and costs. And that's what we'll do.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
Yes.
For council, is there a possibility of us going forward to this party and saying to them, we have incurred X number of dollars as a cost? Will you settle for that amount? If not, we're going forward.
That's what we're going to do.
what they'll
That
do,
will be
sure.
the very next thing we do.
Sure. Okay, enough on that. Next item. Item C, request for forgiveness of debt and release of liens, 804 Beach Court, 923 Frangipani Drive. Mr. Coffey.
Yes, Chairman Mino. These two lots are part of the tax deed, tax sale saga that the last year's board went through. Basically, there's new ownership of these lots that people have for years done nothing, and we've been mowing them. The money that they are requesting to be forgiven is, using the accounting term, uncollectible, and have already been written off our books. If the board were not to waive these fees, there's a very strong likelihood that the new owners will just follow the previous owners, not do anything with properties. We'll mow them for 5 to 7 years until the county tries to do a tax deed sale of their own. They go to the list of lands that nobody wants. The county holds on to it for a few years, and then they approach us about taking it back. So while I understand residents' concerns about waiving money, and I think you all know we look to maximize every dollar My staff worked yeoman's hours with Mr. Reppinger to get some of that CARES Act money at the last minute through Brevard County. As an example, this is not money that we realistically will ever see. What this does is it provides an incentive for two new homes to come into our community, and it also takes more work off of Mr. Getz's workforce. An example of what Mr. Armington was able to accomplish last year, as the board knows, the staff's in the middle of reviewing the budget. Mr. Getz and I were just talking yesterday. We are willingly giving up 2 seasonal part-time groundskeepers who helped cut the grass of all these lots that have turned over recently that the prior board forgave similar amounts. And so while on paper this looks like we're giving away money, we're actually reducing our costs and encouraging redevelopment of the district. So staff recommends approval of these requests. Mr. Armington can talk to specifics of these.
There's a recommendation by staff to forgive and release the liens on 804 Beach Court and 923 Frangipani Drive. Is there a motion to that effect?
I move we accept staff recommendation.
Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Mr. Nugent, was it? There's a motion, a second. Discussion.
I like your question. Do you have the amounts on the beach court?
There's like 4 pages of it, I think, isn't there?
Yes, let me,
Just pages and pages of it, all the grass.
Well, bottom line, isn't that one of the lots that were forgiven already in December?
It wasn't included in the November release. It's in the same category of the properties that were in November, but it wasn't included.
I'm sorry, but I was very interested in that property at one point, so I know I heard it. I thought I heard it anyway. My wife heard it, I heard it, 804 Beach.
This was one of the lots that was called for tax deed sale, yes.
Yeah.
In the group of 22.
Forgiveness, yeah.
But this one, instead of being, this one that wasn't sold, this one was purchased,
Right.
okay?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
this wasn't one of the held certificates by Buffalo Bill. This was one that was purchased by a third party.
That was also waived, though, right?
It wasn't in that, it wasn't
It wasn't in
included
that
in the
group.
one. It was in the same sale, but it wasn't included in the
right.
ones that the
I
board.
thought
Right.
they had said 804 Beach.
No.
Okay, my mistake.
But it was included in the ones that we were responsible for calling up for sale.
Okay.
Right,
All right.
right.
That's where I heard it from then. Okay.
Other discussion, questions? Hearing none, is there all those in favor of the motion to forgive and release the liens on 804 Beach Court and 923 Frangipani Drive, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item D, 9D, Building A renovations project, change orders 5, 6, 7, and 8. John?
yes, Mr. Chairman. The Building A renovation project, for those who recently have come back, is expansion of the kitchen, renovation of the HVAC system to better cool the building and reduce the changing out of the units that happened too soon because of the prior poor design, and the third phase of overhauling the electrical system. Within the policy manual, there's a clause that change orders, I can approve up to 10% change orders, and we've exceeded that on the first 4 change orders. There's also a clause that if it would significantly delay the project, bringing it to the board for approval, upon my recommendation to the chairman, I can administratively approve the change orders, and that's what's happened on January 14th. The 4 change orders, one was years ago between the pots and pans storage area and the liquor cabinet. there was some sink or a commode or something that somebody decided they didn't need anymore, and instead of doing the proper thing of digging down and capping the pipe off at a level surface, they just put a plug in it and left it standing. And that room is no longer two separate rooms, but one big room. So that was one of them. In about 2007, the AC unit on the pool side of the roof was abandoned in place because of oral history, allegedly. Prior board did not want to pay the cost to have a crane come in to replace it on the roof, and they just abandoned that in place and put a new one on the grade, and that's been a source of leaks ever since because the piping going through the roof was still left there. And so the change order number 6, when they were there to fly in the new HVAC on the east side of the building, they took off the one on the west side of the building. Additionally, the kitchen design was done before the design of the new administration building. And the original design showed replacing the old tank that was on the back side of Building A and refilled periodically with another tank. Well, we have a 1,000-gallon underground tank for the generator of the admin building, and instead of having 2 tanks, we wanted to loop this in because there'll be more demand for the kitchen, and space back of the Building A by the lake towards the administration building with all the sheds is very tight. That change order required 7 extra days. And the final change order, when they took out a wall to make a new storage area for the kitchen, lo and behold, when the building was built, they had conduit running up in between the concrete blocks that no one knew about. And when they cut the wall out, they cut the conduit and they cut the wires, so they had to run what the electricians call a new home run, which means going back to the panel all the way back to the source. With that, the revised Parkit contract is $435,000 and change, and that does not include the amount that we are directly purchasing to save sales tax or the plug-and-play equipment, which is coming up next. Staff recommends the board confirm my actions for transparency purposes.
Thank you. As Mr. Coffey mentioned, he did contact me about this. According to the policy manual, I did confirm and give approval to go ahead, so we would not have delay. All of these were necessary. I would look for a motion to approve or confirm the community manager's approval of change orders numbered 5 through 8 at a total cost of $10,810 and the addition of 7 days to the contract. Is there such a motion?
Yeah, I move that we approve the change orders 5, 6, 7, and 8 for, that have previously taken place.
Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second that.
Mr. Gruno seconded. Motion by Mr. Loveland, second by Mr. Gruno. Is there discussion? Hearing no discussion, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Bill, what are we on now? Building A kitchen equipment purchases.
One of my favorite vernacular terms is plug-and-play equipment. It definitely doesn't remind me of a kitchen, but that's what Kathy says is the industry standard. So this plug-and-play equipment was taken out of the RFP so we could directly purchase it, so there's not a markup by the contractor. Typically, contractors have a 5 to 10% markup on their subs. We're recommending using Complete Restaurants bid of $44,000 and change, although it is $3,000 higher than a variety of piecemeal bids from other restaurant suppliers, because Complete Restaurant is the subcontractor of Parkit for the other kitchen equipment that is like welded into the gas pipes and stuff. their bid includes delivery and installation, where everybody else is dropping it off on the curb, and it's our job to store it until it's time to install it. We believe that $3,000 gives us peace of mind that the people putting in the other kitchen equipment will put all the kitchen equipment in, and we don't have to worry about arguing if something's damaged when it's open. So staff recommends approval of the bid from Complete Electric for roll and plug-in kitchen equipment in the amount of $44,248.26.
Is there a motion to approve that recommendation?
Move we approve on recommendation of staff.
Mr. Bruno approves. Is there a second? I'm sorry, who seconded? Mr. Morrissey. Discussion.
That $3,000 is well worth it. Let somebody else be responsible for it.
Yeah, I think these are things part of doing business. Any other discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion unanimous, carries unanimously. IT security upgrades. Mr. Coffey.
Yes. As consistent viewers of these meetings know, we changed IT vendors in December, and as part of, Ms. Brown had multiple vendors walk through and do their vulnerability assessments prior to submitting a proposal. And with the complexities of today's IT systems, you can look under the hood, but you can't tear the engine apart. And that's basically where this comes in. During the onboarding process and transition from our old vendor, several security risks were identified, and additionally, which cost about $7,500 in this bid. Additionally, the balance of the $16,800 is for what they call standardization. What standardization allows us to do is remotely address problems versus paying the on-site surcharge for folks to come out and fix things. And this is part of the long-term savings of moving to a managed proactive system versus a break and repair system that we have been operating in. Specifically due to COVID restrictions on travel, training, and other vacancies in the administrative assistant position, the clerk's approved budget this year has sufficient funding to cover this. So staff recommends the board approve the Omega Technology Solutions proposal of $16,739.79 for security and standardization needs.
Is there a motion to accept staff's recommendation?
I move that we accept the staff recommendation for the standardization of the Omega technology.
Motion by Mr. Loveland. Is there a second? Mr. Nugent seconds. Discussion. Hearing no discussion, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Aye, and I was an aye, by the way. Aye. Motion passes unanimously. G, fiscal year 21 budget amendment. Mr. Coffey.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. This is some housekeeping from back in August when the board selected health insurance and ancillary insurance plans. For simplicity purposes, we budget what we think is the best, and then once we know the numbers, Mr. Henley, the finance manager, takes away all the extra pennies, and we move it to contingency for the board's consideration of using on unseen costs. So staff recommend, there is a resolution to this. Staff recommends approval of the resolution, which, to remind folks from August, we saved $25,175 from our budgeted costs for employee health insurance and ancillary insurance.
Do we read the resolution first, Cliff? You have it?
We typically do. I'm trying to find the right page in the agenda package.
What did you say? I've got it, I can read it.
Hold on, give me. Got it. Resolution 2021-01, a resolution of the Board of Trustees of the Barefoot Bay Recreation District amending Resolution 2020-08, amending the budget.
So our, so we're approving the resolution, in fact. That's the motion, right? So the motion to approve the resolution as read.
Move to approve the resolution.
I'll second.
Seconded by Mr. Loveland. Any discussion? I'm sorry, go ahead. Did you have a question? Yes. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimous. Florida Association of Special Districts, January meeting report. Mr. Gruno, is this you?
Yes.
Okay.
I want to thank the board for letting me go out to this meeting last Thursday and Friday. It was up on the Palm Coast. It's the Florida Association of Special Districts. We have belonged as a member of Barefoot Bay since 2018. Over the years, when we had Chairman Klosky, he told you numerous times how excellent these presentations were, and I will tell you that Thursday and Friday were two top-notch days of education. The mission of the Florida Association of Special Districts is to unify and strengthen special purpose government through education, the exchange of ideas, and active involvement in the legislative process. I'll get to a little bit about that. Next slide, John. Next slide. When we talk a little bit about municipalities versus special districts, there's two major differences. Municipalities and counties provide local government services and have very broad powers, but when we have special districts, they're local specialized governmental services, and they have very limited, related, and explicit prescribed powers. Now, in Florida, we have 1,700 special districts. I thought about that, and I guess when you think how big the state is, that's not too far-fetched. And you'll find it's limited purpose government on a local level. Now, up at the meeting, I would say that we had a ton of fire and EMS. Not much in the library area, ports and inlets, mosquito control was big, water control was big, and then community hospital roads. And one of the case studies actually involved a hospital district and then all other districts providing unique services. Well, when we went around the room, we were the only recreation district. So they were asking, what do we do as a recreation district? So it was pretty interesting, but there were like 1,700 districts up there. Now, one of the interesting things is, next slide, John. They had a really good section on news, issues, and concerns. And the Florida Association of Special Districts has now added a full-time lobbyist, and that person is shared between Tallahassee and Washington, D.C. What happened was back in March when the first CARES Act came out, special districts got no money. And the fire protection district said, well, what about us? We got PPE and all that kind of expense. And so they put a full-time lobbyist up in Washington, and well, that lobbyist now has gotten special districts into the CARES Act. And if you think back a meeting or two, John, I think, managed to get, what, about $6,500 out of Brevard County? That directly came from this group petitioning. And this was such a roar in so many states. Florida is lined up with 5 other states. One of them is Utah. Next slide. The new state legislator start times. We had a change. The state legislature will start in January on even years, and it'll start in March on odd years. So if by now you haven't been fulfilled by not having a legislative session, guess what? It's coming. Next slide. COVID and the state budget. For 2020 and 2021, we did not see any real change. They said they thought everything was going to still be on autopilot. However, for 21-22, right now the state of Florida is $2 billion short, and they basically told the membership up there, don't think any pet projects are coming through. So prepare to stay even. Next slide, and I got one more after that. The other thing is they said that Tallahassee is in kind of dire shapes up there with COVID. And I didn't realize that we only had 40 senators. We have 67 counties, so the senators go across the county lines, and we have 120 representatives. They were saying that if you were going up to Tallahassee and you wanted to get an appointment with a senator, ain't going to happen. If you're lucky, if you even get it, you'll get 5 minutes. The representatives, a little bit easier. With the senators, they don't even have face-to-face meetings. They're all sitting in a Zoom cube somewhere now. So what they spent time here was anybody that has a legislator coming into their area for a visit, buttonhole them, because that's the only time you're going to get them. So make use, if they're down in your area and they're there for lunch, take them out to lunch, because you're not going to get to meet them up in Tallahassee. And last slide. There's a state task force now to review special districts, and I don't know if this is going to make John's day or not. There were 2 people appointed by the governor, 2 people appointed by the Senate, and 2 people appointed by the representatives. And what this was the current state House of Representatives speaker seems to have a little bit of a itch about special districts. In fact, they were saying they'd like to do away with them or merge them into the counties. They have no idea what they're talking about because they don't have any reports yet. But the reports are going to be coming in, I'm guessing, from people like John all over the state. And the really good news out of this, will go back to what I was talking about, why it's important to belong to this group. The Florida Association of Special Districts were allowed to have a liaison as a subject matter expert and a liaison. And so now we at least have somebody in the room. Excellent meeting. Thank you for letting me go.
Thank you. Managers report.
There was a ARC meeting on the 19th. 13 consent items were approved, 11 others, 9 approved, 2 denied for incomplete applications. Next ARC meeting is February 2nd in this building at 9 a.m. Violations Committee did not meet on the 22nd, as majority of the cases came into compliance for the meeting. Next scheduled Violations Committee is February 12th in this building at 10 a.m. That's the same day as our board meeting. Property Services has been busy. One of the issues of Pool 2 is we have the pool contractor doing 2 projects, replacing the pit and resurfacing the pool and replacing some elements of the pool, like the ladders and stuff that are required to be replaced so often. Mr. Getz is using this time to replace anything at all possible with the bathrooms and everything else. So once the pool's open, we're not having the men's room closed down for repairs. Continue trimming trees. The reason you see us doing this right now is when we rent a lift, there's a drop-off pickup charge, so we try to get as much bang for the buck. And the vendor we've been using works a good price with us if we keep it a little while. So some regular continued work. Mr. Getz, who has the largest department in Barefoot Bay, has been very busy the last few weeks getting his budget in. He and I have been taking daily inspections of the Building A renovation project. And I won't read everything because it's getting late in the evening, but his folks do not lack for work. And I like to tell him how much I appreciate him. I don't do that enough. The Golf Pro Shop, there's a Carl Anderson Memorial Tournament on January 30th. See the Pro Shop for details. And the resurfacing of the irrigation pumps continue. Pump 3 has been completed and will be is already been returned, and Pump 2 is removed and taken off site for services. Food and beverage continues lunch services in 19th Hall, 11 to 3 p.m. Just Kathy put a little blurb in about how the folks are really enjoying the live music from 2 to 6. I added a gentle reminder to folks that if you're sitting out in your golf cart, our alcohol license does not apply to you and your golf cart. So be careful, because deputies have been known to walk around our common areas. And entertainment calendars are available at the lounge 19th Hall. A few general items: shopping center electrical upgrade and parking lot light improvement project. Mr. Getz and I had a conference call to deconflict an issue with the placement of the 2 light poles. Next time you're in the shopping center, slow down as you're driving across the front, and you'll notice years ago the lights were put in, and what probably was a landscape curb cut became a quasi handicap ramp up in there. And kudos goes out to Mr. Getz for catching that, because at some point in the future, we'll have to put in a real handicapped accessible ramp, and the light pole in the middle would have to come out. So they've revised that and submitted final plans to us. Those lights will move out to the edge of the parking lot. So we're not like the Department of Transportation. We fix something, we tear it up a year later. The shopping center re-roofing project hit a little bit of a snag. Building codes on one element of the roof changed on January 1, so I had to approve a minor work addition to revise the contract, the construction drawings. Once the vendor has reviewed them, Mr. Reppinger will finalize the contract, and we'll get it on agenda for signature. And just a reminder of some dates of the FY22 working draft proposed budget. The trustees will get it no later than March 3rd. It might be in the evening, but you'll have it on your porch when you get up March 4th. Close of business March 5th. Electronic copies will be on our website. March 8th, free copies of the residence copy will be at the admin building, and the next budget work and the first budget workshop is March 16th. One thing I forgot to put in there is and I notified the trustees earlier in the day, we've had a vacancy develop on the ARC committee that the board appoints. I will be advertising that in the Peak starting on Monday, so once we get a couple applicants, we'll bring that to you for consideration of appointment. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, sir. Attorney's report, Mr. Rippinger.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, I warned you that we were going to talk a little bit more about some litigation. We had, I think, as I advised you at the last meeting, we had the hearings today on the Blissful Things case. There were 2 motions that were pending in that case. And to refresh your recollection, that is a lease eviction case where the owner was evicted, vacated the property, and owes a deficiency on rent. The only issue that's still outstanding is the deficiency on the rent. We had 2 motions that were set for today. One was a motion to strike the defendant's responses to our suit, and the other was a motion for summary judgment, asking for the court to render judgment in the favor of the district based on the striking, which we anticipated, of the defendant's responses. Our motions were denied today, and so the the defendant's responses stand as filed, which doesn't mean we lose the case. What it means is that we have to have a full trial on the case, which we had not anticipated. And obviously, when you handle litigation, the first thing that you try to do is to resolve it without the need to have to go to a trial. And that's what we were trying to do today. And the court stated that based on the responses of the defendant, that he believed that the matter should be tried. There is a fact issue involved in the case. Given the nature of the case and what's at issue, and the fact that we are a public board, I really don't want to get into a discussion about the merits of the case at the moment. I do suspect that within the next couple of days, we're going to have some developments that we may want to go into executive session on. There are there are a few matters, there are a few reasons that a public board can go into executive session, which basically means that you can meet outside of the public. One of those is to discuss strategy related to litigation and litigation settlement. And that's one of the issues that we can go into an executive session on. And what happens in the case of an executive session is that we convene in a regular open forum. We then adjourn the open forum. We go into executive session. We can talk about the case in more detail. We have a court reporter present. I can attend. You all can attend. Mr. Coffey can attend. And the court reporter basically takes down a transcript of everything we talk about. Those proceedings are sealed as far as being open to the public. They're not released until the case is resolved. At the time that the case is resolved, the transcripts of that executive session are then released. I would prefer to discuss this matter if we're going to go into executive session in that forum rather than to talk about it tonight. So basically, all I wanted to do is to tell you that those motions have been denied, and then we will bring that matter for whether or not we go into executive session. I'll give you more of an update of what we plan related to the litigation as we move forward. So if you have any general questions, I'll take them, but I'd prefer not to address the case merits at this time.
One simple question. So when you go in executive session here, I understand about the minutes now. These minutes are actually released later?
After the case is resolved.
Really? In our experience in Michigan, again, your executive minutes were sealed.
The purpose of keeping them, of releasing them is to be compliant with the public records law. The reason that they're shielded is because the legislature has ruled that they don't want a party to have an unfair advantage related to any kind of a negotiation or discussion of the case. So those are sealed until the case is resolved. If the case resolves, then the purpose of having the transcripts sealed is no longer.
Sure.
And so then they're released to the public, and that's how it works.
Any other questions of Cliff?
If I could just suggest, if the board wants to have an executive session, Ms. Brown can circulate some proposed dates and times once Cliff contacts the court reporter. Thing to remember about the executive meetings, some people in Florida call them shade meetings. It's not minutes that become public. It's a verbatim recording of everyone's statement.
It's
So-
the transcript.
Really?
There's an actual court reporter taking a transcript of everything that is said, and that transcript is then released at the conclusion of litigation.
Our minutes used to read, when in the executive session is discussed negotiations. Bing.
Right.
That was it.
But we're not quite at that point yet. I will stay in contact with Ms. Brown and make sure that we schedule that if we decide to go that route. We're not quite there yet. Obviously, we're kind of analyzing where we're at after today, but case can still be tried, so it's
Sure.
not like it was lost. But we're not going to be able to resolve it the way that I thought we would. Anything else?
Okay, anything else?
As far as the two other items, one was the variance that we discussed related to the requirements for the pilings on the restroom. Mr. Coffey and I had a telephone conference with reps from TLC on January 20th. As a result of that conversation and some of the information that I was given from TLC, I've attempted to contact your local engineer, your site engineer, Scott Globitz. We've not been able to make contact with each other. I need to get a point of clarification. I expect to resolve that in the next week, and then we'll do whatever we're going to do as far as filing any application on that. And then the only other thing that I have to advise is that we pushed the consideration of the Stewart lease date to the first meeting in February. So that's where we're
I'm
at.
sorry, say it again. Push.
The Stewart consideration to the first meeting in February.
Okay.
That's where we're at.
Okay. Trustee comments, Mr. Loveland.
Well, it's been a long meeting, and thank you all for coming.
Thank you. Mr. Gruno.
On behalf of the American Legion, would like to thank Ernie and Bill over at the golf course for the yeoman's work in getting the Sandy Labello Memorial Veterans Golf Tournament off the ground. For those that were out there Saturday 2 ago, The morning was very cold and very wet, and the afternoon was very windy. Again, the two guys are great to work with, and we're looking forward to doing it next year.
Thank you. Mr. Morrissey? Mr. Nugent?
I'd make a motion to adjourn.
Well, wait, I have to make a comment. Hold on. You can't shut me up yet. Just a couple things. You put me off. I forgot what one of them was. It must have been important. Oh, it is very important. As you, final comment, we are trying to open this bay up. We're trying to get things back to normal. But please, everyone, remember, we still have the COVID disease out there. Social distance, wear the mask, do as much as you can. Second thing was Mr. Reddy, he's still here. Mr. Reddy, I appreciate your letters, but remember, I answer all phone calls and all emails, but I just don't write letters back in response. So I did get your letter. Thank you very much. Nothing else from me. Mr. Nugent, make a motion to adjourn. Thank you. The meeting's adjourned. I guess so, he is. Yeah, that was my...